and welcome back. We are at the 53rd annual Head of the Charles Regatta, the biggest head race in the world. And today I have a very special guest with me, the chief referee and umpire, Laura Kunkemueller. So we are so excited to have you with us today. Please tell me a little bit about yourself and what you are doing here and what it's like basically running this regatta.
Well, I'm certainly just one piece of it. The umpires are have 100 of us, but we're 100 of 1,700 volunteers. So it's a tremendous effort to put this all together. But the specific role that we have is to identify safety issues on the course and to make sure that people who don't behave well are penalized for that. So we have a unique role, but it's a role that is complementary to a number of other roles, like river control is out there making sure that the course is all set, and we've got emergency personnel who are there if we have safety issues. We've got timing all over the course, doing backup timing, and the umpires are working in conjunction with them to make sure that all of the competitors have a safe, fair race, and then they get a time and they get a place at the end.
So you are basically the glue that holds all of these different departments together.
We are one piece, and if any of those pieces doesn't work, then the system will collapse. So we hold up our end, and everybody's holding up their ends as well, and we all work together. Perfect. So it's interesting. It is different from what a referee does in other regattas. Because in other regattas, we are there to ensure safety and fairness, and oftentimes we're the only people who are on the water. So we would be first responders, we would do safety checks, we'd do equipment checks, we'd be monitoring launching and patrolling the warm-up areas. But here, because this is such a big regatta and because we need so much expertise, we have specific teams that do all of that, and we're one of those.
Okay. So what are some of your biggest challenges in that role? Because those are all really, really important jobs. And if you are the only people out there on the water and you are even then the one in charge of all of that, what are some of your biggest challenges? What do you see happening, or what tends to come up when you're out there?
Yeah. So a lot of what we look for is one boat being impeded by another. So we don't want to have safety issues because boats are too close together. We want good racing, we want aggressive racing, but aggressive racing doesn't mean that you're impeding somebody else. So in a sprint race, that's very easy. You can't touch each other. So in a head race, you shouldn't, because it's going to cost you some time and it might impact the other boat as well. But what we do for this race is make sure that all of our umpires have specialized training so that they know when something crosses over from being aggressive racing into penalty territory. And it's not black and white, it's gray.
And that's really, really interesting. And a lot of rowers and a lot of coxswains would actually be really interested to know from your perspective, what would be considered a sign that something is getting aggressive or that something is kind of walking that fine line to penalty territory?
So we have three things that happen during a race, most of the time that result in big penalties. The first is when a slow boat doesn't get out of the way of a fast boat. And the rule there is that if a faster boat is coming up and is within one length and closing, the slower boat needs to move out of the way and should be moving out to the side that the faster boat doesn't hit. If that doesn't happen, then the slower boat risks getting a non-yield penalty. If we have a situation where one boat is, say the faster boat comes up, cuts off the slower boat, just goes right across their bow. That's not a safe situation. It's not safe racing. That may be a 60-second penalty, but that penalty would be on the faster boat. They need to leave enough room to pass safely. And if you have a collision, that's probably a penalty. If you've got two boats coming in like this, that's not good.
So where on this course do you tend to see the most problems? Like where does that happen the most on this course?
So we have several bridges. on this course, and that's hard to navigate. So the first couple of bridges are straightforward, but still the boats have to go through an arch, so they have to maneuver themselves and make sure that they're leaving enough room to do that pass. The Weeks Bridge, Anderson Bridge, and out here at Elliott Bridge, there are turns and bridges. So when you've got turns and bridges and crews that are racing aggressively, you have to pay attention. And as a coxswain, you have to be really, really alert.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say personally that I have raced this course for almost the last 10 years in both 8s and 4s, and can say that grown men going at full speed in an 8, taking them around some of these turns is quite challenging. And have also come up on some of those issues where you either have to pass or yield, and it's very challenging. It is very challenging.
Yeah.
So do you tend to see a lot of those issues arise in coxed boats as opposed to blind boats, or is there much difference there, or what do you see?
The issues are the same, but in a men's 8, the problem is going to develop a lot faster than in a junior single. So you might see some movement differences, but you have to be a little more alert for the 8s just because they're moving so fast.
Okay.
They're such powerful boats.
Yes, they do tend to come up pretty quickly, as do those turns. You really got to set up those boats at least a turn ahead to actually make it to that next bridge, and you can just barely scrape the sides of the bridges with those oars without getting the penalty.
Well, so one of the things that's so interesting about this particular race is the skill of the coxswains, because you'll see the boats coming up and you'll watch as the oars are just going side by side, and they'll be right next to each other, coming around, maneuvering through the corners. That's really exciting racing.
Absolutely. And so on that note, what is the most exciting thing you've seen out here? Have you seen a great boat race between two awesome mates that you were really excited to see? And then on the flip side, what is the scariest thing that you've seen, or what is the most disastrous thing that you've seen happen around one of these turns?
So every year, literally every year, we have several races where the boats are just neck and neck coming right around this curve out here by Elliott. And it's thrilling. You watch it and you can, wow, how are they doing that? So it is very exciting to watch. The flip side of that is when you see something developing and you think, holy cow, how are they going to get out of it? So we have had a few instances. We had one boat swamp several years ago, and that's problematic. What was more problematic was that the rowers then left the boat.
Now this by chance wasn't the Chinese boat, was it?
Yes,
it was.
Yes.
I remember when this happened.
Yes.
Yes.
So
right out here, actually.
Exactly.
Yes.
So from an umpire standpoint, we could tell that something was happening, because when they came around the corner, there was a rooster tail that was coming up from the boat, and we could watch as the boat went lower and lower and lower, and the rooster tail got bigger and bigger. They got under the boat, and they went under. Coincident with that, we had a rower jump out of a different boat downstream. We had to send the safety boats to both, deal with both sections at the same time, divert oncoming crews from both at the same time, and make sure that the rowers in the 8 didn't get too far away from the boat while other boats were rowing around them.
Oh my gosh.
One of the good things is we have trained umpires who are here. They know what to do with that. They know how to react. And again, we have very close communication with our safety folks. So the safety team, the umpire team, the announcers up on the bridge, we were all working together to make sure we got the 9 people out of the water from the 8. We retrieved the one from up here, and everybody else was diverted around it. But I can tell you it was a pretty tense 10 minutes.
I'm stressed just listening to that. As a coxswain, my heart races a little bit more. So last couple questions here. This is really, really good insight for people that are racing, for coxswains that are steering this course. A little bit about you. What what is it that actually got you into doing this in the first place? What drew you to this position and then kind of got you knocked up the chain to to what you're doing now? Because it's so impressive, and you've been here for years, and I mean your service is incredible to the sport.
Well, I rode in college, and I loved that, but I didn't start refereeing until sort of a strange story. A person who rode with my dad was living in Syracuse. I moved to Syracuse. I didn't know anybody, so I called him up and I said, "Can we have lunch? I don't know anybody." And he said, "Wait a minute. You rode. We're not going to have lunch. You need to come to a regatta with me. I'll pick you up at 7 on Saturday." And so he did. And then at the end, we were debriefing, and he said, "Well, how'd you like it?" And I said, "Well, it was kind of fun." He said, "Well, that's great, because we have another regatta next week. I'll pick you up at 7 again." And so he did this for several weeks in a row, and he just introduced me to people. And I love doing it. I see great racing. I get to meet terrific people. It's really fun. It uses my brain in a different way, and it keeps me around a sport that I really love.
That's amazing. That's a great story too, to kind of like getting back into it and like in an unexpected way,
Right.
I guess you could say.
Uh-huh.
And so again, on the flip side, what are some of the challenges, not just for this course in particular, but in your position, what are some of the challenges that you come up against, or what just being where you are, is it people, is it protest, is it steering, is it what challenges do you run into?
One of the things that I found most interesting about being a referee is the interactions with competitors and coaches. So I do a lot of collegiate races, and collegiate coaches are sometimes fairly fierce when they advocate for their crews. But it's very interesting because that's their job. They're supposed to do that. And my job is to make sure that the regatta is safe and fair. And so learning how to have that conversation and then work through those problems has been really interesting. And I've actually found that that's translated into my business life. So learning how to deal with whatever heat is coming towards you in a constructive way is very important. And it's an ongoing process. Of course, we all have to learn that repeatedly. But that's one of the challenges / benefits that I've enjoyed.
That's really interesting, and I bet you kind of see patterns too on, alongside like different coaches and crews and stuff. You kind of see similarities and how people deal with stress or, something happening out on the water or,
Exactly.
Broken rudder. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really, really interesting, and so I guess just wrapping this up a little bit, what advice from the inside after watching this year after year after year, you've seen all the mistakes in the book made, you've seen amazing racing happening, what advice would you give to newer rowers and coxswains coming onto this course for the first time? It's a little bit scary, it's a little bit intimidating, and it's very, very curvy.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe a little bit newer to the area or newer to the race to get down successfully?
I think the bottom line is that contact never helps you. So there's no need for contact in this race. You don't have to be timid, but the best racers are the ones who can go down side by side and work through their own race plan without getting in the way of or having anybody else get in their way.
Okay, yeah, that's very good advice. Very good advice. And is there anything that I didn't cover that maybe is some inside info or history or something really interesting about the Head of the Charles that you can tell us that maybe most people don't know?
So this regatta has evolved substantially in just the 15, 16 years that I've been doing it. So it used to be that the course was monitored by a few people who were in various stations, and they would call in to us. We were in a room with a couple of boxes of donuts all day, and they would call in to us and tell us if there was a penalty. Now we've evolved so that we have somewhere between 80 and 100 umpires out on the course. We've got about 60% are U.S. rowing umpires, and the remainder are volunteers, some of which have been doing this for 30 years, but we have every inch of the course covered. Likewise, the rules have evolved, And so now for several years, we've been in this status quo where competitors know what the rules are, umpires know what the rules are, coaches know. So the regatta has, I hate to say professionalized because I don't mean it in a capitalist way, but it's the standard of all of the operations that have gone on is really top notch. So the goal we have, which is to bring the highest quality of competition to the athletes, I think we've put together the structure to do that.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, I can say this is literally my favorite event of the year, and I know I will gladly speak for many other people that are here that have been coming year after year after year because it is so well run by people like yourself who have put in the time, put in the service, and done the hard work, and we just show up and row, you know? We just show up and put our boat in the water. But it is thanks to you guys, you know, for doing all of this and for putting in the time and the years of service. So I really want to thank you for your time and thank you for being here with us today. And
It's my pleasure.
Good, and I really hope that you have a very successful rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for taking the time with us, everybody. And this is, please sign off for us and tell us who you are. Give us a big sign off for the weekend.
Laura Kunkemueller, the chief umpire.
And I'm Whitney Powell, finishing off. Thank you very much. This is the 53rd Head of the Charles Regatta, the biggest head race in the world.